Hi there, it's John here from itsmorethanjustgaming.com. Welcome. Today I'm doing the second of my Dreamwars videos. Here, Dreamwars, this is the Ordeal book, which is the campaign book. It's a companion to the unboxing and card anatomy video I've already posted, and it is connected to a website article which has photographs of the various cards and stuff like that, and there is a link to that website in the description. This video, like I say, is going to be a how to play of the game. We're going to basically run through how the turns work and how movement works. I'll show how monsters appear on the board, and we'll show how combat and various things happen. It's not going to be a full game. I'm just going to show the mechanics to give you a brief idea of how to play the game. I should say that I haven't covered absolutely everything because there's a miscellany and useful rules at the back for like certain terrain rules and whatnot, for instance rivers and things like that, that you'll want to look up anyway. In fact, I would advise you to read the rulebook anyway, but hopefully by watching this video you'll be able to place the rulebook in its proper context, because as I commented on in the unboxing and card anatomy video, some elements of the rulebook felt they were presented a little bit illogically for my tastes. So hopefully this will help contextualize it for you. So let's get on with it. First of all, we're going on to the setup. Okay, I'll come to the player characters in just a minute. First of all, I decided to set up the Great Nemesis. So I picked Chamberlain Beogorgon because I thought he looked quite cool. And all of his minions are aquatic, and it just made me think of Shadow over Innsmouth, which is a fantastic Lovecraft story. So I chose him as a nemesis. In the Ordeal book, he has an entire ordeal to himself, which is 3 chapters long. I picked out his faction. I think they're called the Knights of Ekaton. I've picked out their event deck and I've shuffled it. I then made up the Nemesis Horde. Normally this would be in an opaque bag. I don't have any of those, I just have loads of Ziplocs. As per Horde setup instructions, there are no leaders or behemoths in this particular setup because the scenario doesn't call for them. And having read the scenario, it doesn't need them because it's already going to be tough anyway. I've also put out the decks for Dream Shards, Tech Items, Common Items, Kantike, City Intrigues, Outland Mysteries, and let's actually have a look at the character stuff. So I chose Lyanna Stern, the Sky Pirate, and Eogart, the Headhunter, who happens to be basically a lion, because the scenario called for speed and they were the fastest 2 there. I was going to use Melanie and Max, who were both in the previous video, but they were both incredibly slow, and innocent civilians were going to die as a result of that. So I chose Lyanna and Eogart anyway. Sometimes I guess you might not be able to do that if you don't know what scenario you're playing in advance. I just thought for the purposes of this video I would do that. I then went through their different cards and had a look at how many cards they've got. As you can see, their starting gear is rather a lot. Lyanna starts off with 2 regular items, 3 tech items, 3 shards and 2 Kantike, whereas Eogart starts off with 4 common items and 3 shard items. So that's quite a lot of gear. I also noticed that Eogart had the coach ticket, which will probably come in handy for a speed-based scenario that requires them to get between the 2 towns, Falkenberg and Hafen. So those are the 2 characters set up. Let's have a look at the board itself. Okay. So the scenario dictates that Chamberlain Beogorgon has actually unleashed a disease in Falkenberg, and so I've put out some markers here to represent the diseased citizens. The number of diseased citizens are the number of players plus 1, so 3 of them are infected, which is quite nasty. And the players have to get cure type stuff from the sanatory in Hafen. So basically in through the gate up to the sanatory and then across here to Falkenberg. And naturally there's going to be villains along the way. Players can start in various locations, so I've started Lionman Eogart over here at Wolf Mount, and I've put Lyanna Stern here in the Labyrinth, so they're both fairly close to Hafen. I'm going to give the Crescent Moon token to Lyanna, so she's going to be player 1 on turn 1. That's what that signifies. And I've put the watch token on track 1. Strictly speaking, there isn't a time counter for this. However, the infected citizens die on every 3rd turn, so I thought this would be useful to keep track of and also to add a little bit to the tension. So that's basically the setup. So, on to turn 1. The first part of the turn is the events phase, so the first thing you do is you draw an events card and you look at the events card. This one is called Blasphemous Procession. The unholy cults are everywhere. They hide among us, but be sure that when you find one of them, you find more than one of them. If a cultist of the deep is summoned whilst this event is in play, immediately summon another cultist if available on the same portal. It also tells you where you're summoning these turns, so it's going to be the Murky Bog and the Galleon. So first of all, we need to actually summon monsters to the Murky Bog. Where is the Murky Bog? And the Galleon, wherever that is. Well, the Galleon is top right, so we'll put that one there, and the Murky Bog is bottom right of the map. So let's actually, you obviously didn't see me pointing at the map there because the camera's pointing at the event, so let's actually change the angle of the camera. Okay, so I said the Murky Bog is at the bottom right hand corner of the map. So first of all, I'm going to take the Monster Horde, and I'm going to stick my hand into the Monster Horde and draw a beastie out at random. And what do I get? I get an Ekathon Shield. So it goes onto the Murky Bog. And that monster is now deployed there. When it has a defense value of 3, so basically any time it attacks you have to roll 3 or less. It has 2 wounds and it will move 3. So that's what that one is. And we're now going to put what an occultist, or we're going to actually see what we get on the Galleon. So again, we get the Monster Horde bag. I reach in and I pull out, what have we got? It's a Cultist of the Deep. And due to the power of that event, that means a second Cultist of the Deep spawns there as well. So that's the monster summoning part of the events phase done. We then have to check if the stars are in alignment. Actually, before I go on to checking whether the stars are in alignment, I also need to check the Nemesis limit. That's the amount of Nemesis creatures that are currently on the board. There are currently 3. There's the 2 Cultists of the Deep and the Ekathon Shield. And the Ordeal says that the Nemesis limit is 6 plus the number of players, so that's 8. We're not near the Cultist limit, the Nemesis limit. If we did get to the Nemesis limit, every fate test suffers a -1 modifier, is the basic rule. That's on the Nemesis Master. And I'll come to fate tests in a bit. We need to check the stars. Basically, at the bottom of your event card, there is a celestial or astral symbol. And if you have 3 in a row, or 4 in a row in some cases, and it matches one of the configurations on the card, then you actually activate whatever the text is there. It's turn 1, so that's not going to happen just this time, but it's worth mentioning. Okay, so we're now on to the hero phase. In each hero then in turn has 2 actions and 1 move in any order. So you can move and take 2 actions, you can take an action and then move and then take another action, or you can take 2 actions and then move. You can't split up your move, take an action and then continue your move. I don't think that's allowed. Certainly it seems illogical that you could, otherwise you're relatively free to go about it. An important thing to understand in this game is that many of the things you're going to be doing are characteristic checks, which are basically where you roll a die and you compare it to the characteristic in question. So for instance, Liana has 2 melee, 3 skill, 2 technology and 2 arcane. You can't really see particularly well on her card here, but if you take my word for it just now, and if you follow the link back to the website, there's a photograph of her card there. Basically, if you're called to do a check, you roll a die. If you get lower than or equal to, so for instance, that would have been enough to get lower than her skill, or to pass a skill check, but everything else she would have failed, unfortunately. But that's how you pass a check. 6 is always a fail, 1 is always a success. If a characteristic is 0, and some characters do have 0, for instance, Eogard has 0 on his technology and 0 on his arcane, that means you can't make the check. And some things have 0 in technology, some have 0 in arcane, and like Eogard has 0 in both, which I've not seen before, actually, I have to say. There are modifiers as well. Some things will make checks harder or easier. If a modifier drops a trait to 0, you fail automatically. Not even a 1 saves you there. Modifiers are cumulative. If you're asked to test your melee, you need to roll lower than or equal to your melee. Test your skill, it's the same for that. Roll equal to or less than your skill. Test your technology, it's less than or equal to your technology, and same for arcane. There are some special tests. Testing your dodge when you're trying to escape a space that has a monster on it is roll equal to or fewer than your speed. So in her case, Liana has a speed of 4, so it would be roll 4 or less. If you're asked to test your fate, you are given the number you have to roll less than, because fate differs, it's fickle. You can also roll off against other players in Fate. So if 2 players actually are tied, are asked to roll off against one another, they both roll a die, and the person who rolls the highest loses. 6s are bad in this game. If you're asked to roll your defense, it's on the monster card. You should be able to see it here, but the top symbol on the monster card is the number you need to get lower than. So the Ecton shield is 3 or lower, so that's a 50-50, whereas the cultist is 4 or lower, so you've got 2/3 chance. The lower the defense value on the monster, the harder it is to avoid being battered by it. You also have the capacity to do rerolls based on cards that you have, maybe shards or items, but you can only do 1 reroll per check. So movement is fairly straightforward. Liana has a movement value of 4, so 1, 2, can you still see that? 3, can you still see that? Barely. And then 4. And so she's ended up on the inn. And that has a special symbol on it, which I will come to just shortly. What I should say is, if she started on the space with the Ecton shield, so let's imagine she did do that, she would need to test her dodge first, and she fails in that one, because she got 5, although I think I rolled it off screen, so let's roll it again and take the result of that one, because it's the John screwed up reroll. She passes that one, so that was our testing her dodge, not her defense, sorry. So she's actually able to evade the Ecton shield. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4. And she's managed to run away and get into the city, which is where she's going. In terms of movement, you also get, some things will grant you special movement. Sometimes that'll be a shard or a tool or an ability. Whilst you're doing special movement, you don't need to roll to test your dodge. You pass them all automatically. Sometimes it will grant you extra movement, so that's, in the case of a special movement, that's take an extra special move, but to your movement value. Sometimes it will grant you an extra movement, again, up to your movement value. You have to pass all dodges on that one, because that's just a normal move otherwise. So I've more or less gone through many of the actions that you can do. Melee is a test your melee skill. In the case of Liana, that's skill 2. I took a common item, Halberd, so that I could actually demonstrate, but it doesn't actually modify her combat skill at all. You can do a ranged attack. Now, ranged is a little bit special because there's no one stat for it. In the case of this longbow, it's a skill check. And this longbow actually enhances your skill. So it has range 2, and let's say the Ecton shield was here, that's 1, 2 spaces away, because you don't actually count the space you're standing on. And you can't actually use a ranged weapon on the same space as you. It sounds daft that I have to say that, but sometimes you are allowed to do that. So she would just basically test her skill to fire the bow, and it's 4 or fewer. She gets a 6, Again, I rolled off screen, but she did get a 6, and the 6 automatically fails, so the Ecton Shield is quite safe this turn. But if she'd got 4 or fewer, that would have done 1 damage on the Ecton Shield. Damage is normally 1, unless the weapon says otherwise. You can, as an action, intone a canticle, which is basically the equivalent of any other check. So this is, here's one. The Anthem of Pain. It's an arcane. You inflict 3 life points of damage to a single nemesis occupying your own space. So if the Ecton Shield was there, she could try and cast that spell. Of course, her arcane is not very good. She only has arcane skill of 2, so she'd need a 2 or a 1. So let's see what she gets. She gets a 2 and inflicts 3 life points worth of damage, killing it. So that will get rid of him. Great. Whether it's successful or not, you would discard the canticle because you've cast a spell. So I'll move that to one side. Once per turn, if the character is a cantor, the spellcaster, they can meditate to gain a new spell. It's the equivalent of a Dungeons & Dragons wizard resting to memorise his spells again. It doesn't list it in the book at the action section, but if 2 players are on the same space, they can trade items with each other. Tech items, common items, or dream shards. Normally they can't trade canticles unless they have a specialist ability that allows them to do that. One player needs to spend an action doing that. Like I say, it's not in the action section of the manual, but it is there at the back. And so yeah, that's the actions you can take. Players also need to be aware that they have their prestige abilities. In the case of Liana, they happen when her character meets certain circumstances that are live. Sometimes characters unlock them permanently for the ordeal. It looks like in the case of Liana, the treasure hunter happens when you have no dream shards left. You can test your skill to draw the first dream shard. And then you can do that again when you have none. Quicker than the eye, kill a nemesis with a melee attack. Test your fate 2 to draw 1 common item, and every time you kill a nemesis with a melee attack, basically she's looting the corpse, I would guess there. Aye, Captain. You have at least 1 ally or mercenary with you. Those are encounters that you can find. Discard a dream shard to gain a +1 modifier to a characteristic of your choice until your next action, or until your next turn, I should say. So that's quite useful if you've got your mercenary or your ally with you and you need to actually make a melee attack because you want to do quicker than the eye. You discard your dream shard, try and stab your opponent and then loot them. So that's cool. And those are prestige abilities. Like I say, sometimes you have to do to unlock them, you have to do a certain thing 3 times, and you just put tokens on here to on the card to represent how many times you've done them. And once you've unlocked them, they remain unlocked. Now, at the end of the turn, you sometimes end your turn on a specific location. So, for instance, Liana here has ended up on the inn. There's the library next door to her, and that symbol, the little sort of like magnifying glass, which my finger is in the way of, just to the bottom right hand corner of the word inn, signifies that a city intrigue happens. These are mini adventures that happen. So can you see? Actually, I'm going to bring this up to the camera. I'm going to zoom out and bring this up to the camera. Floating ruins. You reach a place where No, I'm looking at the wrong one. Those were Outland Mysteries. That was stupid of me. The exact opposite of what I needed to do. Simon Rochester, chief inventor. High up on the top of one of the city towers, you notice a strange iron construction. Cables drop down to street level where a figure is putting all of his efforts and trying to get a complex machinery to work. The man introduces himself as Simon Rochester, renowned inventor. The machine he is working on is an experimental installation that should bridle the wind's power for some reason you don't really understand. Sorry. But maybe you can do... However, he's running short of materials. Maybe you can do something about it. You and any hero in play can discard a total of 3 tech items. They will be dismantled and used as spare parts for the machine. In alternative, you can try and help Simon yourself test your tech 3 times. If you obtain 3 successes or if you discarded the items, the machine comes to life and Simon is ecstatic. he decides to reward all of you for your help. All the heroes in play can draw 1 tech item, so that's quite handy. City intrigues could be helping a citizen, they could be mysteries to solve, but they're all going to be challenges of some description. There are outland mysteries as well. If you end up on a space outside a city with a symbol on it, you would do an outland mystery, which is a similar sort of idea, but it happens outside of the town. Alternatively, there are trading post type areas, and let's zoom in on one of them. Okay, so there are a number of trading locations on the board. So I've put Liana in the black market, which is a common item trading location. There is also, there are other common item trading locations. There are also tech trading locations like the Tinker's Junkyard. There is an arcane trading location. Where are they? The Synod of the Voices is an arcane place, and there are healing locations. Can't see one on the board straight away. Doesn't matter just now because you'll be able to read up the rules yourself when you get them. But either way, when you are in one of those locations, at the end of the turn you have the choice. You can do your Outland Mystery in this case if you want, or you can choose to trade. In the case of a common items trading location, you discard 1 Dream Shard, and in order to do when you do that, you draw 3 common items from the common deck, and you keep 1 of them. If you're in a tech location, you draw 3 tech items, and you get to keep 1 of them. When you're in a healing location, you may decide to regain immediately 1 life point lost previously during the game, instead of drawing an adventure card at the end of the hero phase. Or, you may also discard 1 of your Dreamstone shards and to regain immediately all of your lost hit points at a healing location. When you're at a Cantor is at an arcane location, you may decide to spend 1 of your actions to meditate as normal, but with more powerful effect. You can draw 3 Canticay from the appropriate deck and keep 1. Alternatively, a Cantor occupying an arcane location can spend both of his actions to meditate, in which case he can draw 3 Canticay cards and keep 2 of them. So trading can be useful if you're looking for specific stuff. The last thing I need to talk about in terms of the hero phase is sometimes a hero is going to encounter an event, or maybe a monster has a special ability or something like that that says lose a turn. That just means they don't have their next hero phase. Everyone else does. I would just say knock the hero down, and at the end of the next hero phase stand them up again. Simple as that. They don't get to do anything in the next hero phase. Lose a turn is lose a turn. Okay, so once all the heroes have had their hero phase, the Nemesis the Nemesis minions, the Nemesis creatures get to have their own phase. Basically, they get to move, and what happens is they will move towards their target priority. Generally speaking, that will be the nearest player. Sometimes if the ordeal calls for it, it will be to be a specific location and it will go there. And they will make the most efficient move possible. So this scenario doesn't give the minions any particular other priority other than the nearest hero. So let's see this. I've moved the Ekaton Shield back onto the board at its starting location. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 there. To Eogart, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in that direction. So it's 5 to Eogart, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it's 5 to either one of them. So they would both test their fate. So Liana gets 2, Eogart gets 4. So Eogart becomes the target priority. So we would then look at his movement, the Ekaton Shield. It's got 3, 1, 2, 3. If it had actually reached Eogart would then need to test his defense. So let's say that Eogart was actually closer anyway, and he had to do that. Eogart standing here, the Ekaton Shield actually shows up, and I had a look earlier, it has the heavy armor ability, so I think that actually means that, actually that doesn't make any difference when the Ekaton Shield is attacking. It's when Eogart's attacking. So Eogart has to roll the defense. He has to roll 3 or less. He rolls 2, so Eogart survives that particular attack. If the Ecton shield actually had a ranged weapon, let's say it did and it had range 2, it would stop as soon as it's in range and then start shooting. So it starts here, 1, 2, 3, range 2, start shooting. And it would tell you on the back of the token what its skill test would be for. The Ecton shield doesn't have a ranged weapon, so that's fine. And Eogard was able to deal with being thumped by it. If there are more than 2 heroes in the same location, so for instance, if both of them were there, they would both need to roll their defense. And it's entirely possible that they would have to roll different numbers because they might have different modifiers, they might have different armor, different shields, or spell effects or something like that protecting them. So Eogard might have to roll 3 or lower, whereas Lyanna might have to roll 4 or more because she's actually cast a spell or something like that. Or the other way around because Eogard's got armor on and she doesn't. Now in any adventure game, it is going to happen that the heroes are going to get wounded and eventually they are going to take enough damage that equals their maximum health. So Lyanna has 4 maximum health and I put 4 life point blood tokens on her card to represent the fact that she's taken 4 damage. In the game, this is called being at death's door. When you're at death's door, a player can take no actions and they only move 1 space per turn. However, you're not out of the game yet. A hero at death's door can still use any dream shard they possess. If they're on a healing location allowing them to be healed, they may also exchange items with other players. Other heroes on the same space as the hero at death's door may attempt to heal them with any item, shard or ability they possess. Heroes at death's door are never the primary target, ever. A hero at death's door spends a number of turns equal to their maximum hit points at death's door. So for instance, Lyanna would spend 4 turns bleeding out effectively. If they've still not been healed by that point, they die. But it does say you can just bring out a new character and start again, because it's the nature of the world, adventurers. And that's it for the Nemesis phase. The Nemesis creatures have all moved, they've all tried to attack. You go to the end phase, check to see if the ordeal has ended with player victory or defeat. In fact, you've possibly already spotted that by now, but if you actually were asleep when something happened, double check. If the scenario is not completed, pass the crescent moon to the next player on the left and start a new events phase, start the next turn basically. If you have completed the chapter, then it will tell you what chapter to go to next. So if this is chapter 1 of an ordeal, if you succeed you would go to 2A, and if you fail you go to 2B, and then if you succeed on 2A, for instance, you'd go to, I think it's 4A or 3A. And if you fail on 2A, you go to 3B, and if you succeed on 2B, you'd go to 4A and something like that. It's a branched campaign, so there's 4 possible end scenarios. And that's it. I mentioned briefly that there are some more specific rules in the game, so it's worth your while actually reading the rule book itself, but hopefully this will help you contextualize it all, and read the sort of like the rules at the back that cover various things like crossing rivers, the aquatic rule, the various monster rules, because I didn't even go into the back of each monster token has a set of monster rules on them. They're all going to be different. There's quite a lot of them. It would be worth your while to at least get a feel for them and then actually enjoy the game. So that's it. That's my very brief how to play video of Dreamwars, the steampunk game of horror and fantasy. I'm looking forward to playing this with my friends. I don't have anything more to say in it. It just, going through the box, going through all the rules, going through the cards and the miniatures, it's just been awesome. If this video if you've enjoyed it or found it useful, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I'll remind you there's a link in the description to the blog article that accompanies this with a number of photographs, like I say, so that you can actually see what you can get better views of the cards that you're likely to be encountering during the game. It's obviously not going to be all of the cards because my phone battery would die long before I could do that, and I'm not going to be uploading hundreds and hundreds of photos to the internet for you. But either way, I think this is going to be a fantastic game to play. I'm sure if you're like me, then you're going to enjoy it as well. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.